Everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. If you're new to the show, it's a live Q&A. If you've got health questions revolving around nutrition, go ahead and start typing those in now. I'll do my best in the next hour to get your questions answered. Today's topic we'll focus a little bit on is taurine. If you missed the crash course on Tuesday's show, we'll put a link in the feed below so that you can make sure you go check that out. Super beneficial, especially if you are looking to improve and enhance your health, support healthy blood pressure, liver function, bile production, lower your triglycerides, lower your blood sugar, reduce your weight, improve your exercise performance. Taurine is fantastic for all of those things. So make sure you check that crash course out. So let's dive into your questions. Anna Maria says, could you tell me if using magnesium taurate has extra benefits over just taurine? Should I also take extra taurine with it? It doesn't say how much taurine is in it. I benefit from this already. So you're benefiting, Anna, from the magnesium. The magnesium taurate is just basically, it's a chelate. They bind a taurate to the magnesium to help you absorb the magnesium better, but there's no substantial taurine in that product. So the benefits you're reaping from it are predominantly coming from the magnesium itself. So if you wanted to take taurine, anywhere between 1 and 3 grams per day is a good place to kind of look at starting as far as dosing is concerned. With ALS, would taurine be beneficial? Okay, so maybe, maybe not. It wouldn't be my first choice for somebody with ALS. ALS, for those of you who don't know, that's Lou Gehrig's disease or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's an autoimmune disease. It's very debilitating and life-threatening. And again, taurine would not be my primary recommendation with someone with ALS. My primary recommendation with ALS would be find the mold and get out of it. Most of the people I've seen with ALS have had mold toxicity. And so mold being a neurotoxin that can drive autoimmunity, you'd want to make sure you weren't in mold as a driving force behind why you have ALS. Outside of that, heavy metals can contribute to it. I've seen gluten contribute to ALS. So as far as acupuncture, maybe, maybe not. Acupuncture can do really good things. My wife is also a doctor and studied acupuncture, and I've seen it do some really amazing things. I've also seen it not work well for things. So it would be one of those things you can't predict, but you could certainly try. I don't know that you necessarily would be wasting your money, but hard to say for sure, because ALS is a tough one. I'd say if it were something else like blood pressure or headaches, acupuncture I've seen really do great with those types of things. Can't say as much about ALS because I don't have a lot of experience in seeing people with ALS get acupuncture treatment. Let's see here. My liver enzymes are up. Would taurine help my liver enzymes come down? Wouldn't be my first choice for an elevated liver enzyme. My first choice for elevated liver enzyme as far as support is concerned would probably be milk thistle, standardized to contain silymarin, which is the active ingredient in milk thistle. Can be phenomenal for liver cell health. But that's just my first choice for a supplement that could be helpful. Now, but my real thought goes into, why is your liver enzyme elevated in the first place? Because no amount of milk thistle, no amount of supplement is going to correct that. If your behaviors are driving your liver enzymes up, you have to change your behaviors. Common behaviors that drive up liver enzymes: excessive carbohydrate consumption, corn fructose or high fructose consumption, alcohol consumption. Gluten can cause elevation in liver enzymes and liver damage. Definitely mold is on the top of that list. Mold and mycotoxins can drive liver damage. Other medications, many of you watching this may be taking multiple medications, what I would call polypharmacy. And if you're on 3 or more medications that are processed by your liver, that can make your liver enzymes go up. Sometimes it only takes 1 drug for liver enzymes to go up. So a lot of things that could cause it. Also at that level, you mentioned your number being 40. Whether that's AST or ALT, you didn't mention, but either way, sometimes exercise, especially if you're going to get your blood drawn in the morning on a fasted stomach, but you went to the gym and you exercised first, that can actually cause liver enzyme elevation skews on a test and lead to a false positive. So that's something else to consider. Let's see. I'm celiac, have gastritis, and trying to heal the lining of my stomach with L-glutamine, alpha-lipoic acid, but I get high constipation. There's a lot of reasons. You should watch my show on constipation. Maybe we can put that link in, because there's a lot to unpack with constipation. L-glutamine generally doesn't cause constipation. Alpha-lipoic acid could, but L-glutamine not so much. But if you're trying to heal the lining of your GI tract, it goes back to what I said about the liver. You have to figure out what's damaging the lining, and so you can supplement. Certainly, we have something called GI Shield, which is a product that has several ingredients that kind of coat and line and soothe that stomach lining. It's good for temporary, but you ultimately want to find out why that's happening in the first place. Let's see here. I wish I could read my own writing. Could liver and gallbladder issues be a reason for increased cholesterol in order to increase? Yeah, absolutely. Lots of things increase cholesterol. Look, cholesterol is the biggest joke of a test. And I just can't fathom why so many doctors fall victim to the ignorance of wanting to micromanage people's cholesterol. We have, multiple decades of lowering cholesterol using medications and all for the sake of lowering or reducing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. And we don't have less heart attacks and strokes, yet we sell more cholesterol lowering drugs than any country in the world. They're the top grossing drugs of all time, and they're the top selling drugs every year. So if lowering cholesterol was actually beneficial, we'd see a better outcome than what we see. Now, all that being said, a lot of things can elevate cholesterol transiently. I mean, exercise can elevate cholesterol. There's studies where just standing from a seated position can elevate your cholesterol 8 to 10 points. So if you're in your doctor's office and you're walking back to get your blood drawn, just that movement from the waiting room of sitting to the walking to the blood draw table or chair could give you a false elevation of 8 to 10 points on your cholesterol. So this is another reason why it's just such a wonky test to make major decisions about, especially when it comes to drugs that can dramatically harm a person. Let's see. Does taurine work for tinnitus? It can, and that's part of the theory, but there's a lot of anecdote on taurine working for tinnitus pretty well. If you, I would say can't hurt to try. Start between, I start with 1 gram or 1,000 milligrams a day, and possibly go up as high as 3,000 milligrams per day, and give it a try. And hey, Carol, come back and let us know if it works for you. But from what I've read and what I've seen, it generally takes a few months of supplementation. What do I think about DMSO and chlorine dioxide? I think they're fine. Give me some context around the question and I can give you a more specific answer. I'm gluten sensitive, and I'm wondering if gluten sensitivity has anything to do with my nephew's illness. He's anemic and the doctors cannot find out why. He's 37, but had similar episode of illness when he was 16. The only medication he was on in the interim was folic acid. Yeah, I mean, gluten can definitely, one of the primary causes of unexplained or undiagnosed anemia, or what's called refractory anemia, which is when somebody becomes anemic frequently and the doctors can't figure out why, is gluten. It's because gluten can damage the digestive system and lead to iron absorption problems. But so iron anemia is one kind of anemia. There are also anemias of B vitamin deficiency as well, which can also be triggered by gluten. So it's very possible. I would encourage you to encourage your nephew to do genetic testing for gluten sensitivity to determine whether or not the diet is a good move for him to make. And, or the other option there would just be to have him go gluten-free for 6 months and see if his anemia corrects. A lot of people's anemia corrects just with diet change. Some you have to supplement as well, depending on what's causing or what's driving the anemia. Is taurine good for energy? Can be. That's why they put it in all the energy drinks. because of its antioxidant capacities. Taurine's a pretty good antioxidant, and also has some athletic energy production enhancement. If you've been tested and do not have a taurine deficit, would it be helpful still to take it? If you're trying to use it therapeutically, possibly. Depends on what your goals are and what you would be trying to take it for. Can we say that a chronic depression is just chronic inflammation of nerve cells in the brain? Pretty much, yep. Chronic depression is neurological inflammation in the brain. That's fair to say. Can children take taurine? Yes. I mean, you can eat taurine. Taurine's in animal foods and animal meats. Children can definitely take it. I mean, I would be a little bit more cautious about dosing, and, depending on the size of the child. I mean, if we're talking, what I'm giving you, when I say 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day, that would be for, the average adult. So, depending on the height or the weight of the child, I would, tailor or taper that dose accordingly. Will taurine break a fast? Technically, yes. Why? Because breaking a fast is introducing calories, caloric foods, or caloric supplements are included in that. So, 1 gram of taurine equals 4 calories. So in that regard, strictly speaking, in the technical sense, taurine will break a fast. What effect does taurine have on vertigo? It depends. I mean, it could have a beneficial effect if it's contributing to your vertigo, but if it's not, then probably not going to do much for it. Can you recommend a good amino blend? Sure, Tanya. We have a product at Gluten Free Society called Ultra Aminos, and it's a fantastic blend of amino acids that we use all the time in the practice to help people who have multiple amino acid deficiencies or protein deficiency. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on using psyllium husks to improve constipation? I think psyllium husk is okay if you're not reactive to it. It can help for some people, not all people. Some people do really well with psyllium in constipation, and some people do horribly because constipation has more than one cause. A lot of doctors will say drink more water and take more fiber. But some people have constipation because they're eating foods they're reactive to. Some people have constipation because they have B vitamin deficiencies. Some people have constipation because they're under too much stress. Some people have constipation because they're basically their nervous system to their gut is malfunctioning, that vagus nerve that helps with peristaltic action of your gut. So there's a lot of reasons why constipation can occur. We have a whole show on how to poop that you might want to check out, Manny. And if you check that show out, we do a deep dive. It's like an hour and a half long. So if you really want to go deep on potential possibilities, I'd encourage you to watch it. What's your stance on peptides? I think a lot of people jump on the peptide wagon and think peptides are the solution and the cure-all for every problem to humanity, and market it as such. And I think most of those people are selling peptides. It's not to say that they can't be useful or helpful. But I've been practicing for 24 years. I've have experience with peptides probably for the past 5 years or so. The first 19 years of practice, did I need peptides to help get somebody better? Were peptides an essential requirement for somebody to overcome or to heal or repair? No. But can they be a useful clinical tool? Sure. BPC 157, that's body protection compound 157, can be helpful in terms of someone who's got a chronic inflammatory injury. But in my experience, it's not necessarily more helpful than, say, SPMs. SPMs are specialized pro-resolving mediators. They're byproducts of omega-3 essential fatty acids, and they regulate the resolution of inflammation. So if you've got a chronic injury, SPM, in my experience and opinion, is far more effective than BPC 157. Again, that's not to say that it can't work, and that those people that have had good experiences are just placebo, but I generally trend to using nutrients over synthetically produced lab compounds like peptides. Do you know why psychosis happens? Is it just constant stress, or does it have to do with diet? Tremendous diet effects, Emmy. There's an old term, it's called bread madness. And so this is one manner of psychosis in which bread and grains are generally very contaminated with mold. And one type of alkaloid found in mold is called ergot, E-R-G-O-T. It's a compound that, just like, mold is a mushroom. So, people take mushrooms for hallucinogenic effects and psychosis-like effects. And so you can eat moldy bread. You can, and this was something that used to happen. They have a name for it, bread madness, where people would actually develop psychotic symptoms, have hallucinations, etc., as a result of being exposed. We generally don't pick up a big moldy batch of bread and eat it. But a lot of our breads and grains are contaminated with molds and mycotoxins. And so you can definitely get some exposure through those types of foods. Gluten can also drive schizophrenic and schizoaffective disorder. I've seen this happen in schizophrenics. I've actually had one case of schizophrenia was a young man. He tried to commit suicide several times, and his mom brought him in to see me, and every night he would sleepwalk into the kitchen and he would drink the buttermilk out of the refrigerator. They kept buttermilk in the fridge. And he had a gluten sensitivity, but he also had a pretty severe casein reaction. Casein is the protein found in dairy. And so these two foods were driving his schizoaffective disorder. And when we cut them out, he was able to get off of all of his medicines. He was on Abilify, he was on Geodon, so major antipsychotic medications. And just through diet change alone was able to get healed and get out of the care of that psychiatrist who was just medicating him without any other solution. So can psychosis occur as a result of diet? Yes, it can. And then also one other thing, I would encourage you to read the work of Abram Hoffer. Abram Hoffer is a psychiatrist. He passed away a few years ago. Brilliant man. He did research on schizophrenics where he was using high doses of vitamin C and high doses of vitamin B3, also known as niacin, to treat schizophrenia, and had phenomenal results. So there's another example where diet, which is where we get vitamin C and vitamin B3, having a profound impact on neurophysiology and thought, the mind. Jessica's asking, Dr. Osborne, you said last week that Synthroid can cause bone loss. Does Tyrosint cause bone loss as well? I would assume so. I think the research study that was recently published was on levothyroxine or Synthroid, not necessarily Tyrosint. But I would say we could probably make that leap. As far as bone testing, deoxypyridinoline is a urine test that you over. There's also telepeptide that can be measured in the urine that helps measure bone turnover, and another one called osteocalcin. So those three are good urinary markers that help you to determine how fast your bone is coming out of you versus how fast you're building it. It's far more accurate and more useful as far as clinical utility than, say, a bone scan. How do you protect your body as good as possible from EMFs if you have to be on the computer a lot? Hardwire your computer, turn off your Wi-Fi on the computer, and put it into a landline. Hardwire it. That's the best way. Some people are using copper devices that kind of alter the EMF field. I'm not an expert there, so I really can't speak from an expert level as far as like whether those things work tremendously well or not. I don't think we have enough science to really validate health outcomes at this point for those types of devices that people are buying and using. It's not to say they aren't helpful. I just haven't seen any major research in humans. So turn off your Wi-Fi when you go to bed at night. If you have Wi-Fi in your house, like set it up on a timer, hardwire your computer, and stay off your phone. A lot of people, they're, doom scrolling, social media scrolling for, hours on end all day long on their phones. And, just if you're going to do that, put it a distance away from you, or screen share it to a bigger screen, and be away from that EMF as far as possibly you can be. The other thing would be to buy an EMF meter and just really measure the output of those devices and see how bad it is. And generally what I've done at home is I know where my hot spots are for the EMF. So I won't set up my chair in that hot spot. If there's so you can use an EMF meter to read the hot spots in your home and just avoid lingering in those places. What's a good thing to do for depression then if it's inflammation in the brain? Let's figure out what's driving the inflammation, TC. If you know what's driving the inflammation, that's what you do. Drugs don't solve for inflammation based on the choices that you're making. Where is most people's inflammation in their brain coming from? From their diet choices, typically. Food, it can be your best friend and it can be your worst enemy. And if any of you have been following, the media lately, the Make America Healthy Again movement with RFK Jr., look, it's starting to come out. The food has been poisoned. We have been, chemically manipulated in our food for the last 30 years. Big corporations don't care. They want to make cheap food and sell it at a high cost for a high profit margin to please stockholders and shareholders, and they don't really care about human health. So, but most people didn't get that memo. Most of the companies don't say, hey, we're going to start poisoning you for profit. They just do. And the ingredients have changed. If you look at ingredients from 30 years ago and the same food items as what they have today, I mean, it's horrific. The Frankensteinian list of chemicals that we're all, being exposed to as a result of our consumption. So if you change that, eat real food, that's probably one of the most profound impacts you can have on brain health. Just change your diet. And then, there are other behaviors as well. Make sure you get adequate sleep. Make sure that you get adequate sunshine. Sun is tremendous medicine. Don't avoid the sun. I know that's what a lot of doctors like to tell people: avoid the sun, you'll get skin cancer. It's nonsense. Get out in the sun regularly, go to bed on time, get adequate sleep, exercise and move your body, eat whole real food, filter your air and filter your water. If you're doing those things, you've got a great head start. And those things generally don't cost much money. You just have to make those habitual changes in your behaviors. What's the best time of day to do full body red light therapy? Generally in the morning. Red light. I mean, when think about red light, when we are experiencing red light is in the morning when the sun comes up. So I mean, the freest red light therapy in the world is watching the sunrise. And then also when the sun goes down, right? So those are the two times of day that if you're looking at doing red light therapy, those are the two times a day that I would say nature speaks to us with wisdom, even when science may lack data. So those are the two times if I were going to do red light therapy that I would focus on. I actually do red light therapy every morning before I go to the clinic. So that's generally around 9 o'clock. I'm taking PEA plus Levagen with I don't know what Liposperse is, Kristen. The health food store said it would replace Advil. So PEA can be very effective for pain. I mean, I don't know, without seeing those other products, the Levagen and the Liposperse, I don't know what's in them. So I can't really comment on those two. If I felt I needed any pain relief, is it safe? PEA is safe. You can use that. I like fish oil, omega-3. I like SPM for pain. I like white willow bark. I like boswellia. Turmeric, curcumin. These are all anti-inflammatory, very safe, long track record of safety and anti-inflammatory potential in the joints. So those are all good. But again, without knowing what's in those other two products, it's hard for me to comment on them. Do you use binders in treatment of mold? You use binders in treatment of mold toxin removal. So binders are not antifungals. So if you have a mold infection, that's not the same thing as if you have mycotoxin buildup in your body. Remember, mold can infect you. You can get a mold infection, an overgrowth of yeast, or an overgrowth of other types of mold. there are a number of different types of mold that can colonize humans, Aspergillus being probably one of the most well-known. But binders won't treat that. Binders are designed to bind mycotoxins. Those are the toxins that molds produce, and to pull them out of your body through your stool. So think of that as, and I know I'm just trying to be as specific as I can, because you're going to use a binder for a mycotoxin problem. You're not going to use a binder to treat a mold infection. You're going to use antifungals to treat a mold infection. Taking 5 grams of vitamin C daily, is it okay to take extra 5 grams of vitamin C every couple of days for constipation? It is. It's fine. Vitamin C's got a tremendous safety track record, even at super high doses. So yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to do that. But ultimately, I'd want to know, why are you needing to use it for constipation? Because what else is going on that's driving that constipation? With severe nighttime cramps and muscle loss and electrolytes and extra magnesium is not stopping, could taurine help? Yes. Taurine regulates the influx of calcium into muscles and nerve tissue. So it's very possible. I've seen taurine do pretty good things for people with chronic cramping. It's worth a shot for sure. And when you say you're taking electrolytes, most electrolyte formulas don't have enough calcium. And so a lot of times nighttime cramps can also be calcium. So if you're taking magnesium, you might just consider a calcium/magnesium supplement with those electrolytes as well. Like, that's another option to see if you can get some relief. PRP, what does PRP treatment actually do? PRP, platelet-rich plasma. That's where the doctor pulls your blood and spins out, concentrates your platelets, and then re-injects those back into you. They have anti-inflammatory and stem cell stimulating properties. So they can actually help with healing of chronic inflammatory injuries. So that's the gist of PRP. You talked about negative ion generators to improve air quality. Do they break down plastics? No, they don't. They don't make enough ozone generally to affect the plastics. Now, the ozone generators do, because it's pure ozone, but the ion generators don't make enough ozone. The amount of ozone that comes out of those is so minute, it's not really going to affect plastics. My omegas are showing all the way in the green. That means I don't need to supplement them, right? Yeah, I mean, if your omegas are solid, you don't necessarily need to take more. And they're probably solid. And I would imagine maybe you were taking them before you got tested, but also maybe you eat enough fish and grass-fed meats to cover your bases. In which case, that's fantastic. I take Osteoforce supplement, but I feel it gives me heart palpitations, even though I only take a quarter of the dose. I've only tried it a few times, but have stopped because of reaction. But would like to support calcium intake due to being menopause. I also heard that creatine is a good option along with calcium. Would you say taurine is a good option for bone health? I think if you're just asking me the general question of what's good for bone health, we have something called a bone box. And it's a couple of different formulations with nutrients to support healthy bone mineralization and bone density. I mean, because we could talk for days about all the nutrients related to bone health. The other thing, Belinda, though, would just be to get tested. Get your nutritional status tested. Do an INA. That stands for Intracellular Nutrition Analysis. That's the best. Best answer is if you are trying to figure out what supplements to take to help fill in the blank condition, doesn't matter what the condition is, do an INA, because that will help you understand what your body needs. Everyone's different. We all have our own uniquenesses, our own differences, our own diets and environments and everything else. And that's why there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution or answer. But if you're asking me in general, a bone box, you can go to Gluten Free Society that would carry those there. Would be my general recommendation. Now, beyond that, you're asking about creatine. I think creatine is fantastic. I think a lot of people, the whole plant-based food movement has wrecked people's bones and muscles because there is no creatine in plants. And if you're not eating meat, you're not getting creatine. And creatine is a major substrate for energy production in the muscle. It also hydrates the muscle. When your muscles are absent of creatine, or not necessarily absent of creatine, but low in creatine, they don't hydrate as well. And so you become more dehydrated. Your muscle cells are more prone to injury, and they're more prone to weakness. So where creatine can come in is when you saturate the muscle with creatine, it affords the muscle to absorb water and retain water more effectively, which keeps it hydrated. But creatine also generates extra strength. So if you're working out, like the benefit of creatine, if you're trying to exercise for bone health, for example, and you're lifting weights or body resistance or things of that nature, is that creatine allows you an extra 7 to 10 seconds of energy production when your muscles are fatigued. So, you know, that it's that point, that muscle fatigue is that point where your muscles burn so much you want to stop lifting the weight or doing the exercise. Creatine gives you an extra 7 to 10 seconds there at the very end of that set. And that doesn't sound like much, but when you multiply it over several workouts and several sets over the course of 6 months, it's tremendous impact on your overall strength and muscle tone. So I really am a fan of creatine in that way. As far as taurine can help. It can help with exercise and energy if you're sluggish or tired. But you know, it wouldn't be the primary ingredient in a bone formula, taurine. I wouldn't put that as a primary ingredient specifically for bone health. I had bad fungal infection, and a month later I started seeing spots in my vision. Could it be from the fungus? Possibly. So there's two things that can cause these floaters and spots in the vision. One is potentially fungal hypha floating around in your humor, in the fluid in your eye. The other is glycated proteins that are when somebody has high blood sugar, diabetics, for example, so you have a lot more floaters and spots across their visual field. And so again, glycated protein, sugared protein, too high blood sugar combined with fungus, either one of those two things could be contributing. A lot of people that have fungal infections have them because they overconsume sugar. And you have to remember, fungus's favorite food is carbohydrate. That's why so many people feel better when they go keto or carnivore or grain-free, because they're just reducing their carbohydrates and they're therefore reducing the feeding of yeast. Can you explain the reason of having low triglyceride but high in both LDL and HDL? I mean, HDL and LDL, I mean, those are both cholesterol. Triglyceride's not cholesterol. Triglyceride is fat in your bloodstream. So if you have low triglycerides, that's good. We want lower triglycerides. Something in the neighborhood under 75 is ideal. But as far as cholesterol is concerned, again, you should go watch my show on cholesterol myth. I'm not a fan of panicking about cholesterol. We've had that rammed down our throats the same way we've been told you need to eat cereal. We've been told you need to eat breakfast. We've been told that you need to avoid the sun. How many lies have we been told? I mean, doctors used to smoke cigarettes on commercials and sell us cigarettes. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in mainstream thought processes around health advice, because that last 60 to 70 years of health advice has done nothing but make us the sickest country in the world. And I'm an outcomes guy. I'm an empirical guy. Don't tell me what you think it is. Show me the outcome, and then maybe we can have a conversation. But again, focusing on cholesterol has been wrong. It's always been wrong. Unless you have, familial hypercholesterolemia and your numbers are riding up over 400 and you've got horrible diet choices and everything else, then, cholesterol's, in my opinion, not much of an issue. Can taurine help? I think I answered that one. Can taurine help cataracts? I haven't seen it directly help cataracts, but macular degeneration and retinopathy, yes. There's human studies on those as well for taurine and helping those eye conditions. Actually, where we learned most about taurine in the eye was with cats in veterinarian research. Can taurine help with ADHD? If not, what does? ADHD, there's a lot of things that help with ADHD. Diet change, I would put at the top of the list. And also, a lot of people think they have ADHD, and what they actually have is they're at odds with their environment. The classic case of this is the young boy in the school classroom, and the young boy is more of a hands-on, more of a kinesthetic learner versus an audiovisual learner, doesn't want to sit still and is fidgety, and so they give him the stamp of ADHD, and so the school can get money from the government to drug the kid. And that's why we have so much ADHD, in my opinion, at this point. It's not to say all teachers are bad, but a lot of teachers, just shouldn't be teaching because they're impatient. And these young boys, they need to be outside, they need to run it off, they need to wrestle, they need to touch things, they need to experience things, and that's not ADHD. So I'd say, first and foremost, do you really have ADHD? A lot of people think they do, have been told they do, but and their symptoms match what the doctor says, but the reality is their diet's the wrong diet and their behaviors are the wrong behaviors. All that being said, let's say you'd have it, I'd start with B vitamins, particularly. I'd start with folate, methylfolate, because of its regulatory effects and neurochemistry. And there's actually some, I think, prescriptive drugs that are nothing more than folate that they're using for kids with ADHD and adults as well. On thyroid meds, working on eliminating my take a while. Found that T3 only had best effect. Also, docs. Do we need too complex a question? I mean, I'm not going to answer, do you need to take a medicine question. It wouldn't serve you well. I'm helping somebody with diabetic neuropathy very bad in their feet and suffered a recent stroke. Can they make a nutritional counseling appointment with you? We're in New York. Yes. Yeah. Put the phone number up, would you, Mel? What does taurine do in the body? Care, go back and watch Tuesday's show. It's a crash course on taurine. How to take supplements so they don't hurt my stomach with food before, during, or after. In the middle of the meal. There's some tender stomach folks do best when they eat some food, take their supplements, and then eat some more food. So think about sandwiching your supplements between the food to mitigate and minimize the risk. I took a mycotoxin test and had present mycotoxin in 4 of the 5 tested. Does this mean my home has current mold? That's a question from Anna on YouTube. Anna, maybe. So here's the thing about mycotoxin testing. It's good testing, but there's context that you want to understand. If you're going to do a mycotoxin test, you need to make sure, number one, before you do the test for a couple of weeks, you need to be grain-free, coffee-free, peanut-free, dried fruit-free, alcohol-free, no yeast, so no supplemental nutritional yeast, no brewer's yeast, no baker's yeast. You need to be no kombucha because there's a yeast fermentation process with that as well. And you need to be off of any kind of fermented food a couple of weeks before that test, because some foods, I mean, largely those ones I listed, can have mycotoxins in them. And so if you're trying to measure your mycotoxin exposure and you're eating all those things, you could get high levels for those reasons. Now, that being said, if you weren't doing that and you took the test, now you have to consider your environment. Could it be your house? Possibly. Could it be your car? Possibly. I had a patient yesterday sent me a picture of their car filter, and it was totally black. And he spent several hours a day commuting to and from work, very sick. So it could be a car. I had a patient one time, worked out of her car. She was a traveling salesperson and very, very sick from the mold in her car. And, one of the things that happens, people buy a new car or even a used car, and what happens is you have these big floods. And then so all these flood cars go to an auction site. They dry these cars out, they sell them at an auction, and then they get delivered to a dealership, and then you get to buy them. And they got mold in them, but nobody told you. So cars can definitely be a source. Your work could be a source. I've had cases. We had a school teacher a number of years ago, when we picked up her ceiling tile in her classroom, just above that, this white hanging tile. She had that thick of black mold growing above the ceiling tile. It was a carpet of black mold right above her desk. And she had rheumatoid arthritis as a result of the mold exposure. And she'd go into remission every summer when she wasn't in class. So your work, your car, your home, other than that, any other place you spend an inordinate amount of time. I had a case, a young girl, spent a lot of time indoor pool, indoor swimming. And I've seen cases where people go to babysitters, and the building there has mold. So where you spend an inordinate amount of time is where you might be getting exposure. The best place, if you stay at home, live at home, spend most of your time at home, I would suspect the house as a potential for mycotoxin exposure, if that's your case. The best way to know is to get a good forensic mold investigator out. If you're in Texas, I'm biased here because I see a lot of folks, but Texas Mold Inspectors does a fantastic job at forensic examination for mold. So if you're not in Texas, you just have to find that person who is really good. But don't hire somebody and pay them a bunch of money to come out to your house and run an air test. Because if you do that, you're going to get false negatives and you're going to get confused. And I've seen that happen to people, and they stay sick. For those of you we've got several mold questions. I just want to encourage any of you listening today, go to moldjacked.com. We'll put a link in the feed for you, moldjacked.com. Sign up for our email there. This entire year, I'm pumping information about mold out to everyone. We're going to launch a documentary on mold in December. And so this entire year, I'm dedicating to mold education to help people who are mold ill, and even those that don't know it. So if you want to stay up to breast about that stuff, make sure you get your email on our list so that we can communicate those things to you. Can taurine interfere with blood pressure medicine? It's not that it interferes with your medicine. It's that it can lower your blood pressure. And so if taurine lowers your blood pressure too low, now your medicine's possibly too strong. So now you're going to be tired. And so in that way, possibly, it's not going to interfere directly, though, with the medication. What benefits do nitric oxide aminos like citrulline, arginine have on the brain? I mean, citrulline and arginine and ornithine can all help with the production of nitric oxide, which is a chemical that dilates blood vessels and helps to improve blood flow. So, follow that down the course of improving blood flow, maybe improve cognition, improve vascular function to the brain, improved oxygen delivery, improved nutrient delivery. So, all good, right? All good things. What aminos are best for chronic pain? PEA is probably one of the better ones for chronic pain, but and tyrosine can be good for chronic pain as well. Tryptophan can be good for chronic pain. It depends. It depends on the person, and it depends on where the chronic pain is stimulating from. Let's see. Scroll down on the left for me. Are we scrolled all the way down? Recommendations for water filter devices underneath the sink. Yeah, best one if you live in a city is reverse osmosis. If you're doing that, just make sure, and there's not a better brand. They're all, if it's RO, it's RO. The technology is pretty the same. Just find a reputable water guy in your city to install it and to maintenance it. But make sure you add minerals back to your water, though, if you're using RO water. So trace minerals or electrolytes are good, because when you use RO, you strip out the electrolytes out of the water. Allison says, you mentioned that B vitamins and B12 are essential to help synthesize taurine. So what if you have excess or high levels of B12 in a pediatric case? Well, I would wonder why the levels are high. Generally, the biggest reason for high B12, there's two. One would be liver damage. Sometimes that could mean cancer, but not always. So don't say it to scare you, but it's a possibility. And the other would be somebody supplementing with B12, and so their levels are higher. Those are probably two of the more common reasons we're going to see high B12. So is that child supplementing B12? I don't know if I answered your question, but best protocol for someone never had their energy back after having viral infections 20 years ago. I've eliminated gluten, all processed foods, dairy, and work out daily. That has all helped big time, but there's still never a point during the day that I do not feel exhausted since having mono. You need to get tested. I mean, you could have, your traditional blood work is normal, because generally traditional blood work is so limited in its scope. I mean, you're generally talking about a CBC and a chemistry panel, which is, it can be helpful if you have a big and obvious problem, but not so much if your problem is more in depth. I mean, you should look at vitamin mineral testing. You should look at your microbiome. You should look at food allergies. You may be reacting to other foods, even though you're eating whole foods and healthy foods. You should still get food sensitivity testing done. And you should get chemical testing done to make sure that there's no chemical exposures. Environmental chemicals you're being exposed to. A lot of people with chronic fatigue are in mold. So that's always a possibility. But I mean, there's any of those things could help you unpack, the next level of answers that you're looking for in your health. I have your book, Only Eat Chicken at Breakfast, Melon and Banana. I get hungry and need snacks as I get dizzy. Where's the question in that? I don't see a question, maybe just a commentary. What are your thoughts on EMF blocking bed sheets? Don't really have any. I haven't seen anything compelling to make me believe that spending that kind of money is going to offer me a great degree of protection. Oh, so this is part two. Would taking taurine benefit a child with PANDAS? Possibly. Most kids with PANS and PANDAS, they're in mold. Their livers are damaged. Their ability to make bile is damaged. So when you can support the liver's recovery, taurine's part of that. B vitamins are part of that. Vitamin C is part of that. So certainly, could be very supportive in that regard. Retested deficient in phenylalanine. Should I take phenylalanine supplement? Yes. Or increase your protein intake. I'd start with 1,000 milligrams a day as just a general support for phenylalanine, because when you combine that 1,000 with food, it should help you kind of climb out of that hole. But phenylalanine, particularly, that's an essential amino acid, meaning your body cannot synthesize it. So you need phenylalanine to make tyrosine, which is how your body makes thyroid hormone. You make tyrosine is converted, and iodine is attached to it, and that's what thyroid hormone is. It's tyrosine plus iodine, and that comes from phenylalanine. So very important in that regard. Yeah, so back to the B12 being high, probably if she, it sounds like one of your children was diagnosed with Sears PANDAS. The liver's probably releasing that B12, and make sure you're out of the mold, because if you're not, the mycotoxins are being processed and biotransformed by the liver. It puts a tremendous amount of stress and pressure on the liver, and so remember, liver stores about 18 months worth of B12, and when it's damaged, it will let that B12 out in your serum, driving up your B12 levels even if you're not supplementing. Why do they put known allergens in prescription meds? I don't know. Why do they do it? Because it's cheaper to manufacture. They do things as cheaply as they can, as profitably as they can. You would think that they would have more health concern in mind, but it's just not always the case. Let's scroll down there. Oh, here we go. I'm very high in all my antibodies. My thyroid antibodies have been grain-free and gluten-free for 15 days now. How long would I need to wait to retest? A couple months at least, Stacy. You should start seeing drops within 2 to 3 months. You may not see full normalization, but you should see drops. But I wouldn't test it any sooner than that. I see many people around me suffer from dementia, often severely. What could be the main cause? I mean, food, diet, dementia, type 3 diabetes. That's what the scientists are now calling it. So think of food first, right? Because diabetes is triggered by excessive carbohydrate consumption combined with lack of physical activity, and malnutrition, chromium deficiencies, vitamin B3 deficiency, magnesium and zinc deficiency, B vitamin deficiency. I mean, we are riddled. Our society is riddled with nutritional deficit. And unfortunately, the mainstream doctors will tell you that we don't suffer from nutritional problems, but how many of them test nutritional problems? How can you say we don't have the problem if you never measure for the problem? I've been doing this for decades, and I see scurvy on a weekly basis in my practice. Scurvy, vitamin C deficiency bad enough that levels are not registerable in people. So we definitely as a society are suffering. Doing repairs, I found mold underneath the lid of my toilet. And is this type of mold a concern? Yeah, it's a concern. Should I clean it or get a new toilet? If your toilet's hard surface, so you could probably clean it, but I would keep an eye on it because when you clean mold, the toilet is a source of water. So, I mean, you could, because when you flush, there's water and spray that gets up underneath the toilet seat. So there's a persistent source of water in that area. So mold could come back even after cleaning it. So just make sure you're cleaning it more regularly. But, again, there's also the context of how much mold. Is it like tremendous amount of mold? Is there a potential thought that there could be mold pervasive in your home and that it's just manifesting on the underside of the toilet lid? Don't know. I mean, I certainly would explore a little bit more, but you don't need to throw your toilet away and buy a new one. It's a non-porous lid if it's a non-porous toilet lid. Let's see here. What can be causing mental slowness? I've been true gluten-free and dairy-free for the last 8 years. I'm overall healthy. There's no mold at home. What supplements can you take to support cognitive sharpness? Get tested, Mario. Get tested. Do an INA. I mean, if your diet's that clean and you don't have any problem at home, then get tested. I mean, it could be anything. There's not like take this one because it works better than that one. I mean, it could be any B vitamin. It could be CoQ10. It could be magnesium. I had a case last week, a woman who had been progressively for the past 3 months or so, just brain fog, couldn't think, mental clarity dropping. In her case, she had tried, the regular standard stuff, but in her case, she just was severely folate deficient. And she was taking a multivitamin that had folate in it even, but her levels were still extremely low. So when we put her on a therapeutic dose, within a couple of weeks, boom, lights came back on. So, I mean, this is where testing is so valuable. I know a lot of you are asking for more for supplemental recommendation, but I love to test because it gives you clarity around supplemental recommendations. Otherwise, it's just you're guessing. My body is constantly asking for protein, and if I don't get enough, my heart rate goes up and I can't sleep. What could be the reason? I mean, protein is very nutrient dense, so there could be certain nutrients in the meat that you're eating or the protein source of food that you're eating that are helping with sleep and helping with heart regularity. It could be specifically amino acids. I mean, there are a number of amino acids that can cause elevations in heart rate when they're deficient. And there are a number of amino acids that can cause sleep disruption when they're deficient. So could be any of those things. I would keep listening to your body, though. If your body's telling you eat more protein, then do it. How about taurine in regards to dogs? Not a vet, but yes. Hi, Doc. Is it normal to have a mild fever after a vitamin C flush? If not, yeah, you could. It can be. When you flood your body with vitamin C and it doing a flush, low-grade fever can be a symptom as long as it's transient and goes away. I would say it's pretty normal. But if it's staying and lingering, you might want to get that looked at. I followed your pre-post surgery nutritional support regimen for my daughter following surgery. Do you have any updates to recommend to this regimen? I mean, it's not an update. It's a tried and true regimen. I've been using it for decades. The only thing I would really update, Katrina, would be you could have your daughter tested and get more specificity to see if there's something else she might be lacking that would help her with her recovery. Is it bad to sleep in a room where cable and home security system and printer electronics are installed? Possibly. Use an EMF reader in your bedroom. I'd put it on your pillow and see what kind of signal you're picking up. But maybe and maybe not. Depends. And it also depends on your level of sensitivity. Magnesium with taurine, B6, and zinc for leg cramps and palpitations? Maybe. Possibly. It's not a bad combination. I'd probably put calcium in there, depending on the timing of the cramps. If they're happening at night, calcium is probably playing a role in it. Sue says, do you have any recommendations of who to contact to have blank? I can't read. You have to finish that question, Sue. Could taurine be beneficial for Morton's neuroma? I haven't seen any cases of Morton's neuroma where using taurine was a driving force for improvement. So I haven't read anything about it. I haven't experienced anything about it. So it wouldn't be something I would say yes to. But that doesn't mean it can't be possible. Just not something I've seen. What can help with toenail fungus? Should I use iodine or lavender oil? I've tried castor oil for the bone spur for 4 months. No help with that. Taking chia seed, vitamin D3, K2, blackstrap molasses. So toenail fungus is immune suppression. If you've got toenail fungus, that means your immune system's not strong enough to fight fungus from growing on your nail bed. Why? There's a lot of reasons that can be the case. Very commonly, people with toenail fungus are in mold. They have a environmental mold problem. You shouldn't wear heavy boots that make your feet sweat, thick socks that make your feet sweat, because that moisture and heat will propagate fungus underneath the toenail bed. So try to aerate your foot as much as possible, expose it to sunlight. Natural sunlight's best. You can also use UV light if you have one at home. And, beyond that, peroxide, for soaking the nail bed in peroxide a couple of times a day for 10 minutes or so can sometimes be effective. Tea tree oil can sometimes be effective. But, ultimately, if I have toenail fungus, I'm inspecting why my immune system's not working strong enough to protect me. What kind of company can I contact to have my home checked for mold and mycotoxins? You just got to get with a good, reputable, what's mold inspector or IEP. And when I say reputable, we have, if you guys go and if you sign up at MoldJack, you put your email in, one of the things we send out is a free mold guide, like the questions to ask, the right questions when you're looking to hire a mold inspector. Because it's a checklist of about 15 things that you want to make sure they are capable of doing and that they will do. And if they can't answer these questions right and they can't do these things, you don't want to hire them. Let's scroll down. Is there a good grain-free group to send people to on Facebook? Yeah, the Dr. Osborne support group. So, I mean, our group, this is the best grain-free group on Facebook. If you go to the celiac groups, they'll all kick you out and censor you for being honest, because most of those people are happy in their misery of illness, and they're happy with, their victimization of themselves, right? I have celiac, poor me. I have to eat this way, poor me. I still don't feel well. I don't know why, but I don't want to figure it out. Poor me. That's always been my experience with that group. That's not to say that every celiac is that way. Certainly that's not true. But a lot of those groups, the moderators and the mediators of those groups they're Nazis. And they want to control the information, and they thrive on being the boss of a group of a bunch of people who are frustrated and still sick and trying to navigate figuring it out. Anyway, that's just an opinion. But the Dr. Osborne support group, do we have a link for that, Mel, we can throw in?
Yeah.
Do you have a supplement blend that can help relieve pain that kids can take too? White willow complex, Kristen, is something kids can take. They have to be able to swallow the pill. The pill's about a 500 milligram capsule. So I don't know if you know how big that is, but not too terribly big. Most kids, 8 and older, can swallow it with relative ease. And if you do use it, I would encourage, make sure they eat and then take it, just to prevent any potential upset tummies or anything. Is taurine in an energy drink really just garbage? No, taurine's not garbage in the energy drink, but the energy drink is garbage. Synthetic dyes, flavorings, sweeteners, not super healthy in that regard, and way too much caffeine to be healthy. So it's not the taurine in the energy drink to watch out for, it's everything else. Follow-up question on B12. Would it be beneficial to have a full B vitamin panel run to get a better picture of her vitamin status, and maybe a liver function test? Yeah, all those things might be super beneficial for her, Allison. In addition, you might ask for a liver ultrasound from her doctor, just to see if they can see anything in the liver directly. As far as labs are concerned, if I'm going to do an analysis of B vitamins, I'm going to do what's called an INA, an intracellular nutrition analysis. And in that test, we measure 55 different nutrients, including all the B vitamins. If you're going to a regular doctor, though, they're probably going to do serum tests. They're probably going to do, serum B12, serum folate, serum B3, B1, etc. Serum tests are a little bit limiting in what they can actually tell you. The accuracy is based on the last meal, typically, so it's not always super helpful. So you can ask for an INA. You can ask for something called lymphocyte proliferation. And you can also ask for red blood cell levels. But again, if they don't know what any of that is, and usually they don't, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. That's because, I don't know. It's kind of like going to an electrician and asking them to do plumbing work. Doctors are not trained in nutrition. And You know, I know you want to be able to take your child to a doctor and expect that of them, because they should be able to do it. But a lot of times it's like pulling teeth. But those are things I would potentially ask for. And the ultrasound is a non-invasive way to visualize the liver. And if there's anything that looks like a mass, then, you know, a lot of times that'll be picked up on that type of imaging before just running over and getting a CAT scan. CAT scans are super high radiation, and especially for a kid, it's not something you really, you know, want to do unless you absolutely have to. How to keep on body weight? Having problems keeping it on without fruit carbohydrates like bananas, and is honey okay with the 2 forms of sugar? Yeah, honey's fine, but you can overdo it. You know, if you're having a hard time keeping your body weight on, I mean, have you tried macro counting, Jake? I would encourage you to do that. And just from a caloric aspect, is it carbs that you're actually not that put weight on you, or is it just total calories that you're not getting enough of? And explore that a little bit, because it may just be calories, and you don't have to increase the carbohydrate per se. Now, there's nothing wrong with increasing your carbohydrate, especially if you're exercising. I know a lot of people are anti-carb keto, but I don't fall within that camp. I think some carbs are just fine. I was just curious if T3 only is truly a less good thing, or just an allopathic dogmatic approach to thyroid treatment. I'm currently on NDT and T3. I think it depends on the person. I mean, T4, if you're talking about T3 medication versus T4 medication, I think some do better on one versus the other. I think there are other variable factors in that equation. I think there's diet and nutrition factors in that equation. And a lot of times those people don't even need to be on medicine. They just need to change their diet and supplement. It depends. It depends. I think with if you want to talk about the dogmatic thing, it's that allopathy has a one-size-fits-all approach to every condition. You know, you spill out your guts, you get a diagnosis based on your symptom profile. Your diagnosis puts you into an algorithmic, this is the drug we give. That drug gets tried first, depending on how it does. If you do well, they keep you on it indefinitely for the rest of your life, typically. And if that drug doesn't work, then there are 2 or 3 other drugs in the pipeline of that algorithm that come next. That's the dogmatic aspect of it, is that, you know, we're trying to put everybody in the pigeonhole them all into the same scalable business model for profit without empathy or good, true care. And I know a lot of doctors are frustrated by that model. Anyway, let's move on here. 20-year-old son in college with EDS, that's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I'm assuming, has sudden onset severe brain fog and issues with concentration. Get him out of the college dorm room. He's probably in mold. The college dorm rooms in the U.S. are riddled with mold. The military housing in the U.S. are riddled with mold. We have a tremendous mold issue in the old infrastructure of our country. So if he's in a dorm or if he's in an apartment, you know, and he's got a sudden onset of brain issues or fatigue issues, mold will be the very top of my list of suspicion, unless he's just partying at college and drinking a ton of alcohol and not sleeping very well. So, you know, again, you know your son better than I do, but these are just conversations or thoughts that I would have around it. Can celiac disease be cured? Yeah, I mean, it can be cured in the sense that, what is celiac disease? Celiac disease is defined as gluten-induced villus atrophy of the small intestine. Can that villus atrophy be cured? Yeah, it can be. But what is required to cure it? Diet change. Now, there are some cases of what are called refractory celiac disease, where a person's gone on a gluten-free diet and they don't feel better and their villus atrophy is still present. And those cases require a more diligent workup, because there's usually other triggers that are also causing their villus atrophy. But celiac disease, in my opinion, can be cured. It just, there's not, you know, they're trying to work on medicines to treat it. They're trying to work on medicines so that people can eat gluten and, you know, not die early. I think all those things are a bad idea. I don't think, you know, when a food poisons your body, I don't think it's a good idea to try to bypass the wisdom of the body telling you not to eat it. Osiah says, wondering to what extent mycotoxins could be inhibiting the repair of an already damaged vagus nerve. Very much so. I mean, mycotoxins are nerve toxins, and the vagus is a nerve, right? So it's a cranial nerve. So definitely potential possibility of that being inhibitory. My lab test showed low creatinine. What would be the cause and how would you treat it? I mean, low creatinine is not typically a very big deal. Generally speaking, I would also, so creatinine in and of itself, creatinine is not a marker that you can make any major decisions on. What did your bun look like? What did your bun creatinine ratio look like? What did your GFR look like? Did your doctor also do a cystatin C? These are all tests that measure kidney function. Creatinine can be low in a person who's underproteined. If you don't eat enough protein, you can have low creatinine. Creatinine can also be low in a person that has a kidney problem. So there's a lot of context around that question, but you know, just a low creatinine and everything else is normal, it's probably not much of a problem. You just maybe want to keep an eye on it. A really good shower filter, something that has carbon and KDF in it. There's a lot of brands or screw-on shower head filters that have carbon KDF. Those are some of the better shower head filters if you're just looking to screw something in. Otherwise, a whole house filter would be a better option if it's something you're looking at. I ordered your intracellular test for a 3.5-year-old. Her traditional blood work says high calcium, very low iron, lower B1. Your test says very good iron, very low calcium, good B1. So this is the difference, right? Is my test is measuring the nutrient levels in the cell. That other test is measuring the nutrient levels in the bloodstream. And the bloodstream can fluctuate from day to day. The cells that we're using to measure don't fluctuate day to day. This is a 6-month average. So you can have high calcium in the blood, and it's not why her blood calcium is high, but her intracellular calcium is low. That calcium's not making it into the cell. That could be vitamin, that could be a number of other issues impairing that delivery, that calcium delivery getting into the cell. I mean, she could have a number of other potential contributing factors involved in that. So, and as far as the iron is concerned, iron is the one exception. I like to see iron panels, and when I see somebody in my practice, we do iron panels on everyone. We also do intracellular iron. Because iron, a lot of times your iron is functional in the blood, but it's also functional in the cell. So I like to see both levels. Most of the other nutrients are predominantly functional in the cell and not functional in the blood. So we want to measure them where they're working, if that makes sense. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your question or not. She has mold. So does she have mold, or are you living in mold, or does she have a mold infection? Toxicity, very high IgE, lower IgG. So current exposure is profound, past exposure present. Correct. I'm not understanding your question. So if she has high IgE levels to certain mold species, that means she's acutely allergic to those different mold species. If she's got high IgG to those species, it means she has exposure and she's making protective antibodies against those species. I don't know if that clarifies it, but I think that's what you were asking. What's my take on methylene blue? I think it's an overrated, toxic blue dye that people are taking who have poor health to try to improve their health because they're desperate. And I think there's a lot of people out there hawking it that don't look at it the same way. The research on methylene blue is pretty clear. If you're a healthy human and you're taking methylene blue, it actually damages your mitochondria. It doesn't improve it. And I'm not a big believer in using synthetic chemicals to improve mitochondrial function when we have all these wonderful God-given chemicals that we need to be measuring and taking advantage of. So I'm not a big fan of it. As far as red light therapy, I love it. Sunshine is the freest red light therapy in the world, but red light boxes are good. They're also low-level laser, red light lasers that can be fantastic for inflammation as well. Can taking L-glutamine in the morning interfere with circadian rhythm? No. Is there a toxic or lethal dose level to taurine? And even though taurine is not generally considered an essential amino acid, they're accounted as an essential in the formulated drinkables I found. There's always a toxic level or a lethal dose level. There's always one. We just, whether or not we know about it or know what it is another matter. But, I wouldn't push, personally, I wouldn't push taurine above 6,000 milligrams a day in a person. And that would be under, tight scrutinized supervision. Valerie, you can call my office. Valerie wants to look at doing some testing. So Val, if you call my office, you can set that up. We'll put our phone number up for you. Recommendation for resolving mildew: learn why it grew. You won't resolve it by cleaning it if you don't know why it grew in the first place. Mold grows because there's water vapor, or there's water damage, or there's extra water, right? Mold grows when there's extra water. So you can wipe it up, you can clean it up, but it's just going to come back. So number one recommendation for resolving it is figuring out where the water's coming from and mitigating it. My TPO finally in range as a year ago, grain-free, dairy-free. Love it. How can I get tested by you for deficiencies? So you could do one of two things. You could call my office and you can establish a consultation, or you can go to Gluten Free Society, Olga, and we'll put a link up for you to do intracellular nutrition testing. That's available directly to anyone. Is immunoglobulin replacement therapy recommended? What helps low IgG3? You got to figure out why it's low. Again, yeah, I'm not frustrated with the question. I'm just frustrated with the philosophy of our system. Everybody wants to know, what do I do to fix this? You have to fix something, you have to have first principles thinking. What caused it to become low in the first place? Generally, when we have immunoglobulin deficits in a person, it's because their immune system is under more duress than it can handle, and the ability to keep up with the demand isn't there, right? That's generally. There's a lot of things it could be. You could be protein malnourished. You could be glutamine malnourished. You could be in mold. You could be eating foods you're reactive to, so your immune system is burning through your immunoglobulins to protect you from the food that you're eating. And until you change your diet, you're not going to see an improvement in your levels. I mean, but you have to reverse engineer why it's happening. Immunoglobulin therapy or replacement therapy will not reverse engineer. It is a synthetic therapy designed to keep you crutching along and to take your money. That's my opinion of it. I'm not trying to be too harsh on you, but that's just my opinion. Any recommendations in the state of Washington for nutritional testing? Bobby, you can get online Gluten Free Society and do our INA there. Just go to the lab testing option at the top of the page and you'll find it. How can I cure my Morton's neuroma? Same answer I just gave. What's triggering it? Morton's neuromas can be tough. Sometimes they're caused by foot pressures, right? Because typically Morton's neuroma is in the feet. I don't know where yours is, Fred, but shoe pressure can drive the formation of a neuroma. A lot of times, if steroid shots don't work, sometimes people consider having them surgically removed, but there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to Morton's neuroma. I would look at that in the same way I looked at any other major problem. We got to reverse engineer why it's there. I didn't, let's see. Yeah, I guess we're coming to the support group. Those of you, we put our link up to our support group already, Mel, on Facebook?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, so looks like we already covered that. Celiac disease recovering takes years. It doesn't take years. It takes years if you're missing pieces. And I say that with all the compassion in the world. Even with the skin variant, you can have the DH. the dermatitis herpetiformis, but it doesn't take years to recover from celiac if you have the knowledge and the data to help you in that recovery. The biggest holdback I see, and this is to Darth Lord Raven, I don't know, I can't imagine that's your name for real, it's probably just your call sign, but malnutrition is a hallmark of celiac disease, and so most of the people with celiac disease are struggling to recover. They make the two top mistakes. Number one, they're still eating grain. So they're still eating corn, rice, oatmeal, what they call gluten-free grains. There's no such thing, but again, our food labeling laws aren't in our favor in that regard. The second most common mistake is they're malnourished. They don't know what they're malnourished in, and so there's no help for the recovery because you can't heal without vitamins and minerals. And so if you go into trying to recover by changing your diet, but you have zinc and glutamine deficiency, those are two nutrients, as an example, that are required for the replication and cellular turnover of gut cells and the healing of gut cells. So two nutrient deficiencies like that could make your process take years, but it shouldn't take years. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that it may be taking you years, but it shouldn't be. You just need the data to support your body. Is there an ideal time during a woman's schedule or cycle to schedule blood work? If you're talking about measuring hormones, not really. You have to take into the doctor has to take in the context of where the woman is in her cycle when they're interpreting the hormone results on a lab test, but there's not an ideal time to measure hormones unless you're trying specifically to get pregnant and you're really trying to see what the hormones look like, during certain times of the cycle so that you know when to support them more effectively. But and that's hormones. As far as like vitamin levels and other things, not so much. And I would even argue the best time to do the blood work is right after the blood loss of a cycle, because that's when, if you have anemia, that's when it's more likely to show up. And that's it's one of the common consequences of the cycle is what's called transient anemia, and an iron deficiency anemia comes, excuse me, and then you're trying to recover for 2 or 3 weeks after your cycle, recover the lost blood, the nutrients from the lost blood. And then by the time you kind of start to feel good, your cycle comes back around again. And if you go to the doctor at that time, you could be getting kind of a normal looking iron level in your bloodstream. But, again, there's nuance to it for sure. I've had microscopic colitis for several years. My internist put me on budesonide for 8 months, went ketovore to see if that would help, but I still have diarrhea off and on. Any suggestions? Get tested, Carol. Get tested. Ketovore's a good start for sure. I don't think it's a bad move, but if you're still struggling, you could be missing things. Microscopic colitis can be caused by bacterial infection. It can be caused by fungal infection. It can be caused by parasitic infection. It can be caused by vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And if you haven't had those things looked at or investigated, you can change your diet and you might have moved the needle a little bit better, but it's a tough one if you're flying blind. Is it tough to write through clear questions when limited? Oh. What are some things to look at if you have severely dry and cracked heels and hands? First thing on the list, I'd look at heavier doses of omega-3. Omega-3 deficiency is real common to cause cracked heels and hands. Mold is a super common cause of cracked hands. I've seen some of the worst skin conditions in people with severe mold problems. But cracking is one of those, and it doesn't always even stop at the heels and hands. It sometimes progresses. Could taurine treat AFib? I've seen people that do well with taurine supplements and their AFib goes away. We can't use the word treat. Treat would indicate that we are trying to treat a disease with a supplement, and that is a faux pas. So could you support your heart with taurine? And is it a possibility that the symptoms of your AFib might improve as a result of doing that? It's possible. Proof is in the pudding. All right. What time is it? Yeah, we're a half hour over the limit here. All right, I'll take one more. Can mold cause your hair to fall out? Yes, it can. So, all right, that's it for today. You guys wore me out. Hour and a half of questions. So thanks for staying here with me and tuning into the show. Well, do me a favor. How can you support us? You can support us in 3 ways. Number one, you can go to Gluten Free Society. Make sure you're signed up over there for our newsletter. I'll send you all kinds of free information about how to recover from autoimmunity with diet and lifestyle. Number two, you can use our products. We have over 100 different supplements in our store, different products for different reasons. We have lab tests. And so if you are looking for high quality, pharmaceutical grade, grain-free, gluten-free products you can trust, support us in that way. And then number three, share this video with somebody who will benefit from it. You know, our mission is to save 100 million lives. And the only way we're going to do that through censorship is to share. Together, we can help more people and we can create a ripple effect that changes the world. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday night for another crash course and back again next week at 12:30 on Thursday for a live Q&A. So look forward to seeing you there. Have a fantastic weekend.